Okay, I'm going to call the Prescott Planning Commission to order. It's Monday, March 6th, a little bit after 6. Do a roll call. David? Here. Josh?
Here.
Steve? Here. Rick?
Here.
John?
Here.
Kate?
Here.
All right. I'll take a motion to approve the Planning Commission minutes from January 3rd.
So move. Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, the first item on the agenda is zoning code review, chapter 635.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to turn it over to Bob Colson in a second to go over some of the items, but I wanted to give everybody an overview of tonight's topic because a lot of the things that we'll be discussing probably are going to be the most controversial in terms of proposed changes that would be made. If you remember about a year ago, some of you I know were on the Planning Commission, but we proposed a number of changes to the C2 district in terms of the commercial area. Those ended up making it to council. A number of letters were sent out to businesses and they did not like those changes. Ultimately, it went to a second reading at council, and then what kicked off this process was council basically stated to us, instead of just looking at C2 changes, we like to look at the whole entire zoning chapter to make sure it makes sense. So that's what started off this process. Now, the changes before you tonight are basically the same that were proposed before. We can go into those as we go through them just to kind of discuss again why they are being proposed. There are also a number of terms of zoning changes to residential districts, and what that comes down to is really if we prefer to have duplexes in certain areas or not, which we can go over some of that as well. But with that being the case, I just kind of wanted to start with that being the discussion so you had some reference to the history of why tonight some of those changes are being proposed. So I'll turn it over to Bob to go over and start the changes that are proposed in your packet.
Thank you, Matt. Does this work off of this here or off of the mouse?
I think either one.
Either one. All right. So let me get back to where I started. So I think that as Matt said, you know, I've been here and been working with staff on some chapters that needed amending, and maybe some new chapters that were coming in, and there's still some work to be done. But tonight, what I wanted to go through is Article 3, and it's pretty much your zoning districts. And you know, my name is Bob Colson, and there's my contact information up there. And so just want to explain a little bit about maybe, you know, some of the colors and what's in the ordinance there, so that the yellow highlights there, those are there for me, so that for cross-referencing, because, you know, if this thing goes through the way that is proposed, there will be some sections that are eliminated. There have been changes to some sections, and it's going to ultimately probably change the numbering in the ordinance. So I've tried to just leave myself some placeholders that says once we're done, got to go back and cross-reference, make sure that this actually references to the section of the ordinance that it's supposed to. So you don't need to pay attention to the yellow highlights. And I probably should have sent that out with the instructions so that you didn't try to figure out what that meant. But there are some red text, and that's information that there's some options and there's some comments on it, and it may be that the Plan Commission has some direction on it. If not, I'm going to rely on staff to answer those questions for us, and we'll go through. But there are some places that are absolutely left kind of open-ended questions that maybe the Commission would like to weigh in on. I'm not going to go through line item by line item. I know that's good. I know you're disappointed about that, but we're not going to do that. So it's going to be kind of a high-level overview. But if I don't speak to something that you read and have a question on, grab my attention, and it's probably most efficient if you can just let me know, you know, the line number that it is. It's probably the easiest way to find where we're at in the ordinance. Now, it's not going to show up on the screen. All that's on the screen is going to be the PowerPoint presentation. But I have a copy of the ordinance, so I can get to what your question is. This is the zoning districts, and so in 6513, we're looking at eliminating the R4 and the R6 districts. R4 is being consolidated into the R1 district, and so that district is just duplexes, and a lot of even your current ordinance allows single family and duplexes in that district. The R6 is really kind of a unique chapter where it's specifically for large lots, and most ordinances are set up so that you have a minimum lot size. There's nothing that says that you can't go beyond the minimum. So this is really a district that probably is just taking up space that a person could, if there was a developer or an individual that wanted a large lot, certainly it's going to be allowed in those residential districts. You don't really need a specific district for that. So that's kind of the thinking behind those two pieces. This is, I think, something that all the way through the ordinance we're talking about the limited number of buildings, and so we try to get a clear description, of what's an accessory structure, and then tied that back to the previous discussion with ADUs and trying to ADUs as being at least as being proposed to be a conditional use, but needs to be counted as an accessory structure, and so you have a limited number of those in each district. In 65 or 635-17, the mixed residential use, there's a clear description of duplexes and accessory structures. We introduce and cross-reference, electric charging stations and solar energy, and we've had those chapters before the commission. We are going to be removing, completely, throughout each district the term special uses, and really going to be looking to consolidate those as to be conditional uses. And then there's quite a bit of language that has got a line through it, and some of that there's just way too much language in my opinion for sometimes, and so I just looking at trying to eliminate some fluff for you. We added ADUs in this district as a conditional use, and here's an area on 635-17. Does the commission have comments or direction as to lot coverage, 50% or 70%? Shows up in some sections as either or. In some places it's just kind of, it's one section is 70 and one is 50. So I'm just not sure where the commission stands, or if they understand just what we're talking about there. And then external lighting standards, we brought that in, but there will be a definition for external lighting. So I guess I'll stop and see if there's questions or concern maybe about the 60-70%. Otherwise I can continue to move on. And
I have my opinion first. You have setbacks, 25 rear, 5 and 5, or 7 and 7, whatever it is. That's your coverage. You're allowed to build within those setback requirements, but could put you at 50%. Most people don't. So my thought is, if they meet the front yard setback, my concern more is not lot coverage, but they can meet the setbacks and they can build in their lot. What it'd be is, let's say they don't build quite as big a house.
Yep.
I was thinking, and it's the accessory structure, so in the backyard.
Normally.
You say two structures, well, basically, again, you can fill the backyard up. Maybe you say maximum 30% of the rear yard can be filled with a structure, so you still have some green space in the back. That's just a thought of mine.
Yeah.
Most people aren't gonna, if they hit their setback, they're probably doing at least 50%, if not a little bit more.
So I'm used to just saying number of accessory structures, one principal structure, meet the setbacks. But this language already existed in the ordinance.
Sure. Sure. I mean, you say two accessory structures. I can fill up my whole backyard with accessory structures. Do we want that? Do we want it just to be a bunch of buildings on a lot, and you got the little setbacks all around the outside?
That's what this question is getting to.
Aren't there green space requirements in other ordinances that talks to the penetratable spaces allowed?
Well,
this is a roundabout way of having green space.
This is another way of regulating that. To
Yes.
Sure, but most of it's commercial. I don't know, residential, does that impervious surface in residential?
I don't think so.
See, and that's where this would come into play, if you didn't want it all hard surface.
I know when we built our shed, we had to have
as a percentage of green space left, is kind of what we were told.
In the rear.
Possibly not.
30%,
But-
isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Might
so
be a different zone.
there is a maximum for backyard accessory structures that you have to maintain at least 30% of.
That's what it was.
Green
That's
space.
what it was.
We also have a maximum of 2 accessory structures that can be built just overall on a lot, so,
To maximum 2, and then totally cover 70% of the rear yard.
yep.
30%.
Where's that written, Matt?
It's under accessory
I thought you
structures.
said of the rear yard.
Yeah.
That's what I was wondering. So the 70% of the rear yard, that's usually measures back building lot lines, you know, and that's your square footage, but 70% of that, that's a lot. A lot of coverage.
Yeah.
And that's,
I mean,
You're saying, it's like 70 over 50, that's what you're saying?
No, I know, once the average, 30% of the rear yard can be covered with accessory structures, that's it. When you add on to your house, that don't count, but accessory structures, max 30%. In reality, you know, when I've calculated, it's like, oh, your lot's this like this, well, 30%, like 1,200 square foot building can go back, that's a big building.
This particular question mark pertains to the whole lot, not the rear.
And I know that, but that, there again, I throw out there, do we say, well, you can build a house as long as you meet your setbacks, you're good? Which is then, unless the green space kicks in and says you can't go 25, 25, 5, and 5.
So don't outline that at all then.
That would restrict them from putting too big a house, but then it'll also include their accessory structures.
Right.
just to note though, however, one of the things that we are saying, if we got rid of this completely, is that if you met your setbacks and you had a 1 acre yard, you could put quite the large building on it, and
Right,
you wouldn't
right.
have any green space, because the 30% requirement only talks about accessory structures, so this would be containing the primary, principal structure.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting, let's see, 100 by 100 is what, 10,000, and 7%, 700 square foot. Or what, 7,000 square foot house, that's a big house.
That's a big setup right there.
But a person could if we said 70%, that's a big house. So do we want houses that big, or do you say we only want maximum 50%? If they're getting a smaller lot, you get a smaller house, and we want. to
Yeah,
limit-
it's proportional, yes, so.
You like to have a little bigger house than a smaller lot. So that's the question here, is 50 or 70, what sounds better for the total lot coverage? And this is for all buildings, correct?
This is for the R1 district.
Yeah.
All buildings, you know, accessory structures,
Yep.
house, everything, maximum 70% coverage, right?
I
Correct.
guess you can
Yes.
complicate it more by saying up to a certain size lot, it's 70%, and then above this certain size lot, then it's 50%.
That's not a bad idea.
It's a nightmare for staff.
Yeah,
It complicates it, obviously.
Hey, we don't
And I will write it however the city wants, so.
I also don't,
that's classism though.
And I just starting to
Yeah,
discriminate.
yep.
It may be discriminating because you got a bigger lot.
You're saying, oh, you're a rich guy, you got that big lot, you can only need 50%, but I'm my poor buddies, they can do 70%. I'm just saying,
The house will still be bigger
no,
than 50%.
that's a valid point. I think I would be in favor of 70 personally, just so if you have a small lot, you can still.
And that includes all the accessory structures, I agree.
I also, I'm not sure that I agree with, the limiting the accessory structure to 2. What's the idea behind that? What if you have a big lot, and you got a little tool shed, and you got a, whatever else? I mean, if you're still you still have the green space requirement met, why limit it?
Some people consider it clutter. You know what I mean? Everyone has an opinion. That looks like crap. You got 5 little bit, one should build one big one.
But if you have a huge lot and you're putting 3 small accessory structures on it, I don't know why we're limiting that.
Furthermore, that according to this verbiage we spoke to it earlier, one of these accessory structures is your attached garage. That's one of the 2, according to this verbiage.
Attached.
Which is
The
your
attached.
attached garage per this
Accessory
verbiage.
units.
And
It's
the
actually
reason,
written
the
in
reason
here.
behind that is to level the playing field for those that don't have an attached garage, they get 2 storage sheds. If you have an attached garage, you still get 2 storage sheds, so you have more storage space then. So it's trying to level the playing field for everyone by saying, okay, well, that's an accessory structure. And so it doesn't have to be, it's up for debate, but that's the thinking behind it, is to level the playing field.
See, I'd say an accessory building, I just call them accessory buildings, you only get two, don't count the attached garage, it's just part of the structure.
And so we could eliminate that, and if it's an accessory it's not attached to the principal structure, and you get two no matter what, even if you have a garage or don't have a garage. If that's the way the commission wants to go, or the city wants to go, that's an easy change.
I would be in favor of just eliminating the
Number of,
requirement, the number of
and then just go by lot coverage, and that's it.
lot coverage.
I like that too.
It'd be simpler, but I don't know what problems, you've had in terms of why that language showed up in your ordinance to begin with, and so, I don't know if staff.
So I mean, maybe we can do some more research. We do still have to cover accessory structures later on, so maybe the next meeting, we could bring some research just to see what other people do, although if planning commission doesn't really care, like this is Prescott, we don't really need to look at other cities and what they do, that's also a
Well,
valid.
it's just I'm sure that people have had the hurdles and.
I guess my only concern is just, I think you already brought it up, but just having somebody put a whole lot of small structures and it just does not look good in the city overall, it makes our city look poor, but.
Yep. And,
Did we land on 50 or 70?
well, if you don't put a limit on accessory structures, which I kinda have to agree with Matt, but I know the city I work when they don't, is just lot coverage, 70%, including all structures on the property.
And we'll bring the accessory structure portion of the code to the discussion at another next meeting. 'Cause I wanted to-
Again, sometimes it'd be nice is if you have just an example lot, saying, okay, here's a lot, if you put 3 of these small ones, this is what it's gonna look like, one big one, it's hard to do that, but
I
that's
don't,
kind of,
want to change an ordinance and find out like half the city's not in compliance either.
well, but it's not, they're not.
They're grandfathered, but
No,
I'm just
they're
saying,
okay,
you
they
know,
just can't, well, they would, that'd be okay, they just couldn't further the non-compliance, that's what, that's
But
normally
if half the
happens.
city is that way, that tells you there's a need for it. Something's off
Yes.
that's that
Or
way
there
for a
wasn't enough
reason.
restrictions to control it, as a building inspector would tell you, you know. Some people don't want that many. and
Could
some-
you change the verbiage to include fixed structures versus non-fixed structures? So you could put a requirement on, limit the number of sheds somebody could buy, because that is the affordable option for storage, so you buy, to remove the limit and somebody puts 10 sheds in their backyard, because from Menards, that could be the obstacle we're trying to avoid. But if they're like concrete foundations, we could outline one in that category, and then versus sheds you buy at Menards, limit those, maybe, I don't know, that might help.
Anything that has walls and a roof is a shed,
Yeah,
permanent or not, is what I'd say. That's me talking from my experience. Doesn't mean
I would
it's
say
right.
that it would have to meet, the requirement, the building inspector, it'd have to meet your building inspection requirements for whatever structure is, and it's deemed an accessory, so if it requires a foundation and whatever else, then that's would be an accessory
But in
structure.
reality, do we allow the tarp sheds in here? For their shed, they got a roof and they got sides. So then is a permit needed, because that's just a.
You do need a permit for those, but they don't inspect them.
Right, it's just more of just for setback requirements, probably what you look for, you don't inspect anything, because they're just a whole type shed.
Yeah, the carports are the ones that are plastic.
Yeah,
It
plastic
does.
or canvas or whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So that wouldn't necessarily need an inspection, but it's still considered a shed, it's not totally permanently secure.
It's an
but
accessory
maybe-
structure,
Maybe we
yes.
should say they should be anchored, because I don't want them ending up in John's yard or Miller property or something. They'll blow away, so that we want them anchored somewhat, so there's that part of what a shed is. But right now, if we just talk about coverage, because we can talk about accessory structures later, you said, right, Matt?
Yeah,
different meeting.
We'll have a different meeting where we
So
can
I'll move
just
it,
discuss
so we
this.
don't keep talking about them, but lot coverage, what do you think? 70%,
Yeah.
Yep, I'm good with that.
7,000 square feet, you still have quite a bit of green space on a lot that's 10 by, or 100 by 100 or whatever.
all right, thank you. I assume that was, or that was a consensus.
One other one, we went back to like page, or line 272, and that's just, again, in Prescott, they've always had, if you're on a corner lot, you got 2 front yards and then 2 side yards, which is good and bad, I think. It's 25 feet from each street that you're on. I know some areas, again, I'm using my experience, some will go 25 front yard, the side yard on the other street is considered a side yard, it's not 25, it's 15. and then you still have a rear yard and a side yard over here. I don't know if that makes a difference. Otherwise, you're taking your house and putting it back into that corner, where if you didn't have to go off of both streets, you could proportion it better, and you might have more of an actual rear
Is there a
yard.
little
Yeah.
safety issue though, getting too close to the road?
No, you still, because you know,
Yeah.
you still got the public right of way, plus you're still 15 foot back, so you probably meet the vision triangle setback.
Okay.
Just
Yeah.
a thought. I
So-
don't like to muddy the waters. I know
Yeah.
it's been that way for years, and I just think, yeah, you're taking someone's corner lot and they gotta tuck their house back into their corner.
Twice.
You really don't have a rear yard.
Yeah.
Or if you let them go 15 feet, they can go 10 foot closer, maybe they could still have a rear yard.
So one
Just a
way that
thought.
I've done this in the past, because I think that it is, corner lots, they, you know, yeah, boy, they get whammy twice, you know?
Yeah, right, so if it was 15 and 25, you still have a rear yard of 25.
Yeah, so one of
chance
the solutions that we've had is to say, okay, well, the front yard, then that would be the big setback. That's where your driveway, your mail is. That's your front yard, and now it could be considered a side or a rear yard. The other ones, and so you wouldn't get whammied with having to have two front yard setbacks.
Right,
on a
and
corner
one could
lot.
be a little bit more than a little bit more than a side yard, but not as much as a front yard, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, but I mean, the person that lives on a road, just without a corner, their side yard is whatever it is, and it's so that the person on the corner would have the same side yard, they would have a
It's
front.
kind of the vision thing, and it'd be interesting with the vision triangle, but if you let
Well, the
go-
vision triangles always has to come into play, so,
That's just a thought. Then you're not penalizing a corner lot person to where they kind of lose a lot of their backyard, because you push them two streets in.
yeah, because they have two front yard setbacks, the corner lots do.
And again, I still say you push them a little bit on that one side that's the other street. Maybe it's not 15, maybe it's 10, just double the side yard setback for a corner lot side yard. Then they have more space in the back.
I put a tick mark by that, so that we can come back and revisit that
Yep.
at some point, and maybe not tonight, but.
That's fine, I just, everyone can think about that and draw it on a piece of paper and see what you think, kind of.
You called for me.
Huh?
You got
All right, where are we gonna meet? Little election. All right, sorry about that, I just had to throw that out there.
No worries, no worries. I think you need some lighting standards in here, and so this just brings them into pretty much every district. The multifamily, we described duplexes, and again, the number of accessory dwelling structures, and I think we'll get this resolved, that's probably by the next meeting with accessory structure discussion about what that is. We added EV charging stations, we talked about that as a permitted use. We talked about adding solar energy, and this should say small scale, and if you go back and read, there's different sizes of solar energy, and so permitted use would be a small scale. The others would have to be a conditional use if it's allowed in this other district. Yes, sir.
So you say R2 and 283, you say an R2 is multifamily resident for 3 or more dwelling units, and then back here on 407, you say it's permitted use is only duplexes, it doesn't say multifamily. It doesn't say 3 or more.
So this is, the purpose of the R2 is duplexes and single family? Is there somewhere where they've got
Well, you go back
triplexes?
to page, what did I say?
283.
283, thank you. 283, it says it's three dwelling units or more in a single building. So they don't match up right now.
Okay.
Up front, that's establishment,
I see where, okay.
so it's R2, or duplex,
Yes.
that's fine, that should just be changed into
I think
match.
I think the intent was that it's duplexes, single family and
Yeah, and it's
duplexes?
just, I know,
Yes.
this one probably just think it changed, that's.
Yep, I circled
want
that.
to verify.
I circled that. Talked about ADUs as being a conditional use in this district, right, bringing that in. Some of the districts have a 10-yard side yard and others have 12. I'm just wondering if you want to be consistent, just have either 10 or 12 as a side yard.
I could see wanting to have, if it was an apartment building, you wanted it to be 12 instead of 10.
But this is only duplexes now, they
Yeah.
switched that over, so this is.
This
just
is
for
single
duplexes
family,
and
the single family and duplexes in this district, so.
Oh,
You think it's 10 foot side yard good enough, you think?
I think, yeah, I guess.
10.
I would say that.
Okay. And we redefined, you know, the minimum square footage, you know, because it's limiting to single-family duplexes, what those are. And we've already addressed the impervious surface. I assume that's going to carry through the entire discussion. And we've talked about external lighting already, so. High-density residential.
Can I go back one more?
We can always go back.
I just one more question. Line 432. 20,000 square foot lot for duplex, to me seems like a lot if you only need 8,500 for a single family. If you double a single family, it's only 17,000 and you're
I
only
think that's, I
20.
think the intention was if they want a 10,000 square foot lot for a duplex.
For a duplex, that's my thought. So is that per dwelling or is that? for
Per
the whole-
dwelling, yeah, so the duplex would have to be double that,
Right, so you're
Yeah.
saying a lot
20,000?
for duplex should be 20,000 square
minimum,
feet.
minimum.
And see, the reason I think that's a lot, first of all, you're double what a single family would be, and you don't have the setbacks that a single family would. You know, so a duplex is gonna be together side by side, you don't have that setback, so do you really need that extra square footage, is my question.
Well, I mean, in a single family, you need 8,500, you're putting two houses smacked together on a lot, and you're saying it needs to be 2.5 times the size.
Right, you're going from.
That's a lot.
17, if you took two single family homes, that's 17,000, you got a duplex, that's 20, you're asking for more of a lot area, and yet you don't have the setbacks, there's no setbacks like you would for a single family. Does that make sense?
Why is
Well,
there not
the-
that?
Because, okay,
Because the duplex.
your house is here, then your neighbor's house is here, and you got 10 feet and 10 feet, right?
Setback.
Now, imagine if you built them together,
A duplex.
you don't have that 20 feet separating you, because your houses touch.
Oh,
You
yeah,
don't need the
yeah,
side yard setback for each side of that duplex.
yeah.
You have 10 feet on your side has 10 feet, and your
And that
neighbor's
other
has
side
10
has
feet.
10 feet, yeah.
Yeah.
They're not together.
So are you thinking that it's just 10,000 square feet?
And
I think
10,000
it's
might be.
10,000.
It might be a little small, but yes, at 10,000, because if you're adding a house that's, what, 4,000, let's say the average house is 3,000 square feet, add to, 8,000, you're 11,500, that's a little small. So I would say like 1.5 times, maybe it's 17,000.
But you're putting two families in there now. Okay.
Right.
So now you're only saying 10 feet on this side, 10 feet on that side.
Correct.
Okay, so if you had twice that space, then the family that had a yard over here, the family that had a yard over here. I think that might be the reason.
The setbacks haven't changed though.
No, but the usable area for
usable area.
In the
each side
back,
is
or
a
wherever
bigger.
your extra green space is.
You have less.
And you'd have a bigger backyard or a bigger front yard, that's correct.
I do
And
feel
maybe
like
bigger
that's a
side
lot,
yard
though.
depending on
But you're saying
the,
that, you're saying it needs to be, the two-family home has to be 2.5 times the size of a single family. I'm not saying it should be the same size.
At least twice as many people gonna be in there.
Correct.
Okay.
But I-
But why is it 2.5 times then, not double?
Yeah, I
yeah,
agree with that.
Now, if you said 8,500, okay, it has to be 17,000 total for a duplex,
That makes sense.
it would make sense to me, the math, because you're saying it's two families.
Yeah,
But
okay.
you're saying, hey, it has to be 10, you're saying each family needs more space than a single family home.
I see your point.
Anybody else?
So what is it now?
this is 8,500 square feet,
No,
for a single
duplex,
family, it's
10,000
10,000,
per unit,
yeah.
So for a duplex, it'd be 20,000.
correct.
Right now, it probably
That's a
says,
lot.
it says 10, and that highlighter means you want to add that per dwelling unit.
I just redefined it was two-family dwelling, and I just put per dwelling unit, and so,
So right now, it just says 10,000 square feet.
yes.
No.
They're saying because it's a duplex, it needs to be a little bigger lot than a single family.
And so we could say that it could be 8,500 for the single, and it would be a minimum of 10,000 total for the duplex.
And that's what it says now, right?
That's what it says now.
And that seems a little short there, so you do 1.5 times.
I'd go 17.
I'd say 1.5 times of 85 at least. So that'd be what, 12, 13,000?
One thing I think a lot of times people do is do get duplexes is because affordability.
Right,
And I
so
think
keep it,
they kind of think I'm gonna get a smaller yard.
yeah,
Yeah, I
keep it more
agree with that.
affordable.
So maybe we do, 12, 15,000, something like that. I don't know what you guys want, what you guys think's appropriate, but
1.5 or
20
2?
is appropriate.
I don't think 20 is appropriate.
1.5 or 2 times? I mean, those seem to be the numbers that have been kicked around.
I would feel
How about
comfortable with
13,000?
1.5, yeah,
13,000?
13 is more reasonable.
yeah.
Just plat it out, two-family dwelling unit needs 13,000 square feet to put a duplex up.
Okay. R3.
And then
Go ahead.
along with that, on 446 and 47, got the minimum dwelling size as 575 for a single family and then 750 per dwelling unit for a duplex. That doesn't make much sense either, I don't think.
Well, the 575 was already there, and I think the 750 came somewhere else in your ordinance. I can't remember where that came from.
So again, we go back to like Kate was saying, if you want, or whoever was saying, if you want affordability, a duplex usually would, sometimes is smaller than a single family because it's a couple starting out or people starting out with just one child and then they go to a single family.
It should be less, I believe it should be less than
Right.
double the single family.
That-
So maybe it shouldn't be per dwelling unit, it should be just 750? That's a minimum. I mean, that's not, I mean, it's not the max.
That's really small,
At
320.
least match a single family.
Per
You know,
unit.
Maybe it's the same as a single family.
Make it like
What do you mean?
11.5.
Well, 575 per dwelling unit, right here it just says per dwelling unit.
I think you should put per dwelling unit, so you don't make a 200 square
Right.
foot one side and a
Right.
800 the next and say, hey, I'm at the 1,000.
Right, so 446 says 575, maybe we say 447 is 575 per dwelling unit.
So just match it, but they're just double.
Yeah.
Right, it'd be double, because
Yeah.
it's say per unit, yep.
Okay.
That's on, what you're thinking, John?
Yeah, either double or less. Yeah, I was thinking maybe, you do 1,000 or, but that's fine too. 11, what is it, 1150?
Yeah, it'd be 1150 then.
Or yeah, 575 per dwelling unit.
Yeah, yep,
I'm fine with that.
okay.
That's still that's not very big.
No, it's still not, but that's the affordable,
Yeah.
a couple moves in to start, maybe one child, and then they go.
Yeah, that sounds fine.
Again, now some of this stuff, we're going over the same ground, I just brought it up, so there's, the number structures, and we'll talk about that. E-charging is a permitted use, solar energy, small scale, ADU is a conditional use. Throughout wherever there was a condition, special use, we're removing that and rolling things into conditional uses. And we talked about the 75%, and we talked about the external lighting, so I'm just going over a lot of the same ground.
Yep.
What's line 479?
Excuse me?
You have a note in here on line
I was just kind
479.
of seeing that too.
Yeah,
For-
line 479 says, what is this?
Yeah, so businesses serve provided they serve the tenants and owners of the dwelling units, and so I'm not sure, is that like there's a,
Building management?
is it, or like a salon or something? I wasn't sure what this was talking
Well, I don't
about.
think it'd be a salon, because a salon usually serves the public.
Yeah.
I
so
think
it's
this
under
would
the
be like,
conditional
like,
uses.
what does, like, say you have a 20-unit apartment building, and you're like, what's apartment 1? How come there's not a bed in there?
Right.
Well, that's the office, that's
Yep.
the leasing agent, and like,
Okay.
there's a break room for the cleaners.
Right, so one of
That'd be my
the
guess.
units would be an office or a.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
utility or-
Yep.
Okay, so you're okay with what that is there? I couldn't quite figure it
I think
out.
that's what that means too, yeah.
Well, should we figure out what it means and then like,
Business services provided specifically to serve the tenants and
Yes, that's
owners
the
of the
office.
dwelling units, and I think, given that explanation, it makes
Snack room,
sense.
the laundry room.
I know,
candy
we want
bars.
to clarify it a little bit. Like, or do you want to change?
Sometimes it's nice to be a little broad in case
Yeah,
there's something we
keep it
forget.
Yep.
I understand
That's
it based
not my
off of what you guys have described
Okay.
now, and so I think it makes sense. Okay, so we talked about the R4,
I have a question about
yes, sir,
456 external lighting. You're talking about worried about light pollution.
yes.
That, you can have it in several spots, and I think it makes sense in certain spots, but not others.
Not an industrial.
Well, it should be in industrial, it should be in commercial, but not in any residential, and I'm not saying it is,
Well, I'm just telling you, from experience, that I've had to live next to somebody who's put up a very large light on there, and it shined right in my window. And so, but if it was across the board that we need to light down instead of up, or around, I think that, they should, we're trying to get people to light only what they need to light, and to keep that from going across other boundaries, because light pollution, it isn't just up, it's out as well, and to adjacent neighbors. So I think it's appropriate across the board, but that's, I put it in there. But I'm certainly,
I just know that if you
it's,
talk to the police and you say, what's the best way to stop crime, they'll say, turn your lights on.
well, the lights will still be on, but it's up to you,
Light up the whole neighborhood.
yeah.
Cause I got somewhere close, 2 blocks away, I can see that neighborhood light shining.
I mean, I get that, but
I got a
just-
BB red though. I got a BB.
So that's the thinking behind it. Now, whether that's what the city wants, it's easy to correct that, but that's, the thinking behind it is just to light what you need.
Yeah, I agree.
So you're above the horizontal plane, so you're looking for no uplights?
And also just, so that it doesn't just go straight out. You want it to go, you want it to be cut off so it goes down, down,
Pointing at your neighbor's window.
Well,
yeah.
I don't think, I wouldn't want that either, but
But you never know, some people like.
But if there isn't a cutoff shield on it, then that's what happens.
Does that speak to like the front of your garage, the lights you put on the front of your garage? I mean, really none of those like point down, they're all just broad light.
if you have a normal residential style, it doesn't, by the time you're on the street, it's dissipating.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking, most of this is you're talking your commercial wall packs.
Yeah, most of it is, yeah.
Lights.
Some of them around their house would.
Yeah, they do, especially like in.
Well, mine are pretty dim, but
garage.
so that speaks to those, and these are required to be shall be fitted with cutoffs restricting emission of light above the horizon plane. So those, pretty much every single garage light that's on
What's
every house
existing is existing, you're not going back in time.
Sure, but the stores don't cater to that.
What you're thinking is, the little globe lights, you're just saying the standard light will shine out.
The sconce.
But
Yeah.
but I think we're more shooting towards is the floodlights that go straight out. That's
So maybe I should clarify, because right in the same cookie cutter statement that's in all the other
Yes,
categories.
it
says,
is the same language.
Light fixtures shall be fitted with cutoffs restricting emission of light above the horizontal plane.
Yes.
What does fitted with cutoffs actually mean?
It's just the casing is solid.
Yeah, so here's the light, and there's a cutoff like above it, so that the light can't go up.
Okay.
It has to go down. So you're restricting the cut down. So you're
You gotta
cutting it
maybe
off at the
clarify
horizontal
in
plane.
verbiage, because that would mean every single garage light in this town's, you can't buy.
You can't buy one for residential.
Right.
You know,
We could take it out of the residential. I was just leaving, just from personal experience, that it
I don't
can be a
dislike the
problem.
idea. The idea
Yeah.
is good. If somebody has a wicked shiner and they're shining right at your house, that's not cool. But how do you word it in such a manner that it doesn't?
But I suppose it wouldn't be enforced unless there's a complaint.
Oh, true.
Right, that's why I said let staff make that interpretation. If it really became a problem, we'd probably change our ordinance, should we do that?
Yeah.
Because there really isn't one now, but it's a good idea.
So remove it from the residential?
No, just.
Oh, leave it as is?
Interpreted.
Yeah, they all thought we'd leave it, but it's interpretation by staff. Is it really shining bright, or is it just a bulb that's glowing the way it's supposed to?
Maybe could we change the verbiage just a little bit so it doesn't read all exterior light fixtures shall be fitted with cutoffs
Yeah.
to. We got to change that a little bit.
Don't say
That
all.
Immediate. Right.
Primary lighting emits upwards or downwards.
Could
I
use-
wouldn't even say primary,
You
I'd
could
say
use
like,
candle watts.
Or
but I don't
majority.
know that.
Auxiliary
Or-
lighting. It would be the extra lighting.
Candles?
I always just think about.
We
the
could just say
stupid
exterior
photos
lighting and
that are
just leave it at that,
ridiculous.
and then it becomes kind of problematic for staff to say, is it all or none, or is this good or is this bad, but,
Well, the problem when you have all, and you have the guy with the light shining on the neighbors, and all of a sudden he goes, you can go to every house in the neighborhood because they don't have cutoffs.
I don't,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right.
I'll put cutoffs when you go to make everybody else put cutoffs.
Isn't there a lumen, a scientific way to look at it? You got a certain amount of lumen.
There is, but who wants to come up with a number?
If you're over X amount,
You should be up there talking.
But it also depends on the use, because the lumen and the height of the standard, I mean, that becomes really difficult, because the higher the standard, well, it needs to be brighter to give you the same amount of light at here so that you can navigate and be safe, so. So,
Candles at the property line.
We got a meter to read that?
Yeah, there's a.
There are meters that read that, yes,
Josh
that
said
read
he
lumens.
paid,
yeah.
only charged $100 an hour to go check that out for you.
Yeah. So what's the pleasure of the commission in terms of that? I mean,
So can we remove all exterior lighting fixtures and say like accessory lighting fixtures? Cause then it's really vague and good. Right? Cause like your house, your garage lights aren't really accessories per se.
I haven't had a concern about it yet, I wouldn't worry
Like, what if
about
I
it.
leave my shades open, just have them?
Well, we're changing the verbiage. We're gonna immediately make every house light illegal, cause they just don't.
What about just removing the second sentence and just leaving it with, oh, it's still vague, and then it's up to the
Yeah, that's vague, and it's like, it makes sense for everything.
Minimize light pollution. Yeah, that's probably not a bad idea.
that makes sense. It puts the burden on staff,
That's what I was
for
gonna say, you're making
complaints.
Staff, like,
Well, the second sentence is, in my opinion, not adding much value. I mean, it's not clarifying.
You guys get a lot of calls right now? Okay.
I will say though, similar to Bob, I have a neighbor who decided to put up a big blue floodlight that shined right down the hill into my yard, so
Yeah.
I am very much aware that something like this would be nice to at least include to make sure that there's something in there that.
No floodlights?
No, I don't think you want to say that because there's safety issues, but
Take that second line out for now,
I-
and then again, if we have a problem, we can always.
you could always revisit this later, and if it isn't a
Staff can
big
interpret
problem,
it.
all right.
What if,
And that's,
It'd be nice if
that's,
just people talk to each other.
you know, I had.
there's that.
Silly we need government, would it?
so is that across the board or just in the residential districts that you want that second line
I
removed?
think just in the residential districts.
When we get snow.
I'll see what the rest of the group,
I would agree with that.
Residential
Yeah.
districts.
just the residential only remove that second line?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the only thing
I know, you can have it because commercial has it all the time, because also they're like, hey, here's shining the light.
we got that one taken care of.
What are we at?
So we talked about this, we're okay to move on?
Yeah.
Okay. Talk about just eliminating this whole section and rolling the duplexes into the single family?
In the single family?
In the single family, yes. Well, it's a mix. There's a single family, there's a single family duplex and so. This is just a single family. We're adding e-charging stations, the permitted use, adding solar energy, and again, that'd be small scale. I'll put that on there. There should have been add ADU as a conditional use that wasn't listed in there. Again, removing the special uses and call them conditional uses. Reduce side yard from 20 to 25. I've got to find where that is on 635-20.
584.
What is it?
584.
Thank you.
That's from 25 to 20. Is what, right here.
Yeah, and I'm not sure, I'm kind of trying to figure out if that came from staff or it came from somewhere else in the ordinance, Do you recall, was it something that you guys wanted?
I think it just didn't make sense since we're saying 8 foot minimum and then we jump it all the way up to 20 feet, 5 feet total. I mean, we go from 16 feet, that could be possible if you did 8 foot minimum each side and then all of a sudden you said, nope, you gotta have 25 feet total. It just, I mean, if you're trying to center a building on a lot, we're literally telling them we're telling them you have to skew the house to a certain size because you can't do just 8 feet. Which I guess kind of does beg the question, just overall, do we want to just do 8 feet? Because I know some communities have looked at 7, 8 feet minimums.
Either side.
5 feet.
Yeah, I've seen it both ways, where it's just a side yard, it's a side yard and it's a side yard. Now others saying it's a total, but one side, has to be a minimum of this and the total
No,
can't.
I think the side yard should all just be 8 feet, period.
Yep.
It makes it much easier to deal with, not only from staff standpoint, but at least from the public standpoint, it's just like 8 feet,
If sometimes people want the part of their house closer to the property line, so you get a bigger side yard on one side.
But 8 feet is, you can still do that, but you couldn't be any closer than 8 feet without a variance.
Yeah, they could always ask for
So are we going to scratch that and just go with just a standard
8 feet on
setback
the
on a side yard?
Yep, that's my thought.
So
What is it
16
now?
total?
Feet.
And that's what it is now, so we're keeping it at 8 feet?
Right now, it's at 8 feet minimum, and then they have to have 25 feet total.
So, but does that protect from a developer putting houses on top of each other like they do in so many new developments? I mean, that's not desirable either, to see whole
Well, you'd have
fields
a-
get turned into giant homes that are this far apart.
16 feet.
What is it?
There's 16 feet total between them because it's 8
That's what I'm
and 8.
wondering too.
Both sides have to add up to a minimum of 20 feet.
So if your neighbor gets in.
So if you're 5 and 20, you're at 25.
But you can't do that because it has to be a
You need
minimum of
minimum.
8.
That's
Well,
right.
not today,
Yeah,
that's what they're proposing.
Yeah, so then you'd have a total of 16.
Yeah, I like
Your
that.
neighbor sneaks in before you, you gotta be farther off the property line than they do. They go first, right now. Right?
Oh, yeah, I like it where it's.
Just
you're-
flat out 8 feet
8
side
feet.
yards, yep.
So it's just across the board, and so that would mean that there would be a minimum of 16 feet between, that's the smallest the distance would be between two buildings, 16 feet.
I thought this is referring to looking at the individual
Their lot.
house on the individual lot.
I agree.
That's what I was thinking too.
I'm
but
pretty
now
sure
they're
that's
explaining different.
what this is, because I remember thinking through this when we were building our current home. I thought this was when you have a home on a lot, from this side to this side, the home has to be at least 8 feet from each side, but a total of both of those sides,
Yeah, that's what it says.
That's exactly what it
That's
says.
what it's saying right now. and-
regardless of a second house being built.
It doesn't matter, like,
Right.
you can have, here's the property line.
Yep.
You got 8 feet, they got 8 feet.
Yep.
You still both need 25. You just, both of you decided to build your houses close together. so
Okay.
you-
Dave had made a comment
Same-
where it was, if
same.
one house got built here, they've got to move over.
No,
That
they
was
don't.
confusing.
That-
He just made that comment, that made it
I thought-
confusing, so.
I thought there was some discussion that
Yeah.
the 25 was, if I put mine first at 8,
No.
then you got.
That's what I was
yours.
interpreting.
No, the second person could put theirs at
So the
8.
8, so if we had this 20 feet total, that would mean if you had 8 on one side, you have to have a minimum of 12
That's
on the other
per
side?
lot, but it doesn't carry over to the next lot. You don't say
No, I
because,
don't.
okay.
You
yep.
forget the neighbors.
Yep.
I'm saying my lot.
Yep,
If I had 8 on one side and this 20 feet total means I'd have to have 12 on the other?
yes,
Yeah.
minimum. You couldn't be any closer than,
8 and 8, if you want to center it.
Yeah, 8.
Yeah, I like 8 and 8 too.
But so, like I was saying a minute ago, are we creating an environment where a new development would put houses?
16 feet, every 16 feet is
It
ours.
has to be
It just seems like
I
that.
know.
I hate
Yes, that's-
neighborhoods
You
that
go
are-
5 foot off the property.
yes, that's what it's saying.
Well, so
That's
then
what it
so
would be
then
saying.
Let's say 10. Got
I think-
10 feet on each
Well,
side.
what about the phase 2 of the Great Rivers? I mean, those gotta be 20 feet.
If they're already approved, you're gonna have to live with what's.
No, I get that, I'm just using that as a.
But 8's the minimum.
Right.
8 is quite.
So you go up to
a bit.
Woodbury and those giant homes and they're 10 feet
Those are
apart.
like 5 feet apart.
Right, so that's what I'm saying, we should try to
You
avoid.
can't even get the lawnmower down.
Yeah.
It is.
I
I'm saying we should try to
I
avoid
would-
that.
I actually had to say,
For my
I'd like
house,
you to
but I mean,
farmland. and put
I
them all
get it.
closer
For a
together.
developer and
I
maybe,
disagreed myself,
you
but I
know,
think
that-
seeing the farmland
that
every day,
limits-
a little closer together. They don't go outside anyway. Maybe we see in our yard in big subdivisions.
So do we wanna go with 8 feet or 10 feet and
I think
eliminate the
8's
other, or?
acceptable.
Yeah.
But
Eight-
it's 16 feet, I mean,
No, I mean, I think it's not very far.
Better than 5 that I deal with every day.
Wanna come closer?
Okay, so that takes care of that discussion. And I think everything else we've talked about on here, and we know what to do with the lighting in the residential district.
Yeah, Bob,
Excuse me?
maybe should we cover the zoning changes as we get to them? on this?
We could.
Okay. So if we go back to, so R5. So before, in front of you, just as we get to the zoning changes, so as I mentioned before, some of the things that we're suggesting and seeing if there's interest from the commission. So you have a zoning map that says proposed and one that says,
And they should be flip-flopped. The existing proposed are flip-flopped on these maps, I believe. Look at your map.
Yeah, I was gonna,
what?
Here's the same thing.
This is proposed.
No, because it doesn't include our new industrial park.
Yeah, that's left off. The parcels, I don't think Cedar Corporation had the updated parcels.
Yeah, but this one has an industrial park, and this one says
Yeah.
existing, this one doesn't, it says
And
proposed.
the existing was our
This one
data.
doesn't have C5 and 6 on it, and this one does, the one that says,
The one that says proposed has all kinds of different.
has
zones.
all the zonings on it.
Yeah.
One says R5 and 6.
So, oh, go ahead.
Oh, we had two different databases that
Yeah,
we drive from. So
and
they had
that's,
Cedar
that's our fault. We,
Corporation make the
we should have put
proposed.
them out on the same map. We pulled one,
The legend.
yeah, the one we brought back from the city, and then the other one, the proposed, isn't quite current in terms of our map, so I went to the city's map and brought in that. I wish we had a big screen. The subdivision on the very bottom. So
I get it,
that maybe these aren't all, but.
Well, this isn't right, because we got rid of half of these. That's
Yeah,
why this
so
one-
that's
That's
executive
what it is
residential.
right now. This is, and we didn't take them out of here yet,
Right.
because you haven't done that.
Right, this is proposed and it still shows them, and this is existing and it doesn't show them.
Okay.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, that's what makes
So
sense.
maybe just the legends are flip-flop.
Oh, could be. What we're trying to show is that, this and this are the changes that go to.
Yeah, so this should go over here.
And this is the overlay, this is the overlay.
That's confusing.
Yeah, this is.
So the legends are flip-flop, I think is all.
It
I
could be, yeah,
think our legends are flip-flop.
yes.
And of course, it doesn't show the
Well,
initial part.
No,
That
can't be.
that wouldn't be right either, because the legend on the one that says existing,
The colors.
So the legends on your two map, the current existing legend has all the zoning areas that we just don't use are not on there.
Okay.
So meaning if you see one on the proposed map that's there but it's not on your existing, it's because we don't actually use that zoning district. So unfortunately, when our database, there was no way for us to just have that print on the legend when we printed it. So that's why that's there. And then if you're missing parcels on the proposed map that Cedar Corporation did, is because they didn't have the up-to-date database that showed the industrial park parcels, and I believe second edition of Great Rivers.
Right.
So with all that being said, the main focus though of what we're talking about in terms of single-family residential, if you look at the two maps, there are two proposed changes to zoning. One of them is if you look at the St. Croix Bluffs area, that would move from an R1 to this R5. And the second would be the Great Rivers edition, which would be moving to the R1 to the R5. Now the reason we're bringing for this to discussion is currently R1 right now is if you have a 10,000 square foot lot, you are allowed as a conditional use to turn that into a duplex. Now what that means is if we keep it as a conditional use and keep it as an R1, we as the city never have the power to say no. Now, as part of looking at this map, those two areas seem like the overall idea for what they were meant to be when they were designed were meant to be single-family houses. Now, that doesn't mean they can't be rented. You can still have somebody who comes in and buys a single-family house and rent the house. But if we keep it as it is now, somebody can come in and pretty much both districts have almost at least 60% of the lots meet the 10,000 square feet size. So if they come in now, say, I want to turn this into a duplex, I'll meet all the conditions the city puts forward, we don't have the ability to just say no. The only way we could do that is if we wanted to keep both neighborhoods single-family lots, and then we'd have to actually change it to the R5, which part of the discussion really is if we don't think this is a good idea, R5 kind of comes obsolete as well, because we're not actually using it. So I guess with that, I'd turn it over to Plan Commission to see opinions,
I think
thoughts.
it's a good idea.
What was the issue before, was this what you were talking about earlier, that nobody wanted to do or not?
Well, I think what we're seeing in the older part of the community is now that they've been 40, 50 years development, we see a lot more people coming and buying those houses and wanting to turn them into duplexes. So a lot of the older part of the community, we actually have duplexes on lots that are non-conforming because since then we've changed our zoning. So the idea is just to try to get ahead of this before some of these houses start to age and we get to a point where, 30 years down the road, say somebody wants to sell their house and then somebody comes and buys it, want to change it into a duplex.
I think as keeping the R5 is important for future development too, because of future development, like, you know, I want to build single-family homes, and I want to market them as single-family homes, not, hey, you're buying a single-family home, but hopefully nobody builds a duplex.
And most people think that when they buy into a traditional subdivision, that it's going to be single-family unless it's talked about up front. And so it's a surprise to people when that happens, that a duplex moves in.
I like the idea.
I like it too.
So I think the thought process is we are not required to send letters to property owners telling them we're changing the zoning, but I think the thought was just to make, in full disclosure, to actually send letters to all these property owners stating their zoning would change. So,
basically it'd be going from mixed residential, which is what most of the community is, correct?
yes.
To these developments just going to this single family
R5.
residential.
Because they have the bigger lots that could meet the duplex requirement.
Okay, I just,
I think that's what I'm.
Correct.
Yeah.
so basically we don't want, okay.
So any other questions, concerns about maybe the changes on there? The last one was just a hatch pattern for your Riverway district, so that staff can be able to talk to people in that district, know that there's also Riverway standards that also apply, including the underlying zoning, so.
Looking at line 587, talking about the maximum lot coverage in the R5. That says no more than 50% of the lot may be covered by structures.
Yes.
Would we be changing that to 70?
Yeah, I think we've decided that across the board.
Okay. Just wanted to confirm.
Well, that's what I was going to make across the board, that was going to be 70, so. We've had a discussion, that this district probably isn't necessary. People, if they want to build a big lot, they can build a big lot. I mean, there's nothing that says that you can't create something greater than the minimum, so. The C1 commercial, added the electric vehicles, solar farms. It should be a condition. You should read large-scale solar farms as a conditional. Remove the special uses. Added the drive-in establishments as a conditional use, and then added that you could have a zero setback if fireproof construction, 25 feet for non-fireproof construction. And so that staff and I talked about that before, and I wasn't able to make those corrections in time to get it to your packet. And so, but that's language that's already in there for other pieces of it. It just didn't get included onto this one. So, Matt, do you want to speak to that at all?
I guess, yeah, so I'd just add the reason this was, if you look at probably about 50% of our C1 properties right now, they have a 0 rear yard setback. And in fact, what we just recently approved with Two Rivers also pretty much constitute a 0 yard setback. So as long as they're meeting the fireproof construction requirement, we think this is more what's in reality of what's going on in the C1 district versus the 25 feet just isn't a reality for most of these buildings that are down there.
And I would, just being a building inspector, I'd say you just say 0 lot line, you have to meet the state commercial code, which, there's a certain
Firewall,
what's
there's a
considered
fire rating.
fireproof construction.
Yeah,
State code would identify that, so the state must meet state commercial code if you're gonna have less than 25 feet or something.
So would you prefer that as opposed to what it says?
That's just me as a building inspector, but this probably would work, because they more than likely gotta submit to the state anyway, and the state's gonna say, you will build this to this standard, so that's fine. It just directs them a little quicker is all.
This just doesn't tell you, what the fire rating is, but the codes would.
Mm-hmm.
And the C2, I'm just seeing if there's, This one, Matt, you might want to speak to this because I think this is part of what came out of the original one that came through with.
Yeah. So I guess this is the, kind of the big one that started this whole process to begin with, was trying to figure out the best way to, so when we looked at the C2 district, generally what you want to see in a commercial district is the outflow and inflow of traffic. You know, when you're looking at retail, when you're looking at restaurants, when you're looking at service providers where people are coming in and out to use those establishments, you generally want that kind of commercial flow back and forth. The issue that we see with a lot of our commercials is they're used for warehousing, wholesaling, storage. We've heard getting more complaints too that we're approving too much storage. I don't know if Planning Commission agrees with that or not, but that's just one of the things that we hear sometimes. So the thought process behind the C2 change is that really we want to look at how do we make it more in the long term friendly in terms of actual establishments that's going to drive traffic in and out. So the process was, well, manufactured mobile home. If you look at some of the commercial district that we have right on Highway 10, there's a mobile home that has a bunch of stuff that's parked right out front, and they just recently hauled in a new mobile home that is in there as well. So looking at long term, if that's something we want to keep as a use that allows that to keep happening. Vehicle and equipment sales and service establishment. The idea here is not to remove it as a use altogether, as a permitted use, but move it to conditional use. So if you look at the building that's next to First National Bank, that property came in as a used vehicle sales. Per our code right now, we have no ability to put any conditions on it. One of the things I would have loved to have been able to do is actually brought it to Planning Commission and said the following conditions have to be met, X amount of vehicles have to be on site, they have to be so far away from the right of way, et cetera, et cetera. Unfortunately, without that being in the code and it being a permitted use, we pretty much just have to say, yep, you're allowed to go into that building and any other property that comes forward in the CU2 that does that as well. So those are the general overview, and then just looking at, again, warehousing, wholesaling, and storage establishments don't generally drive traffic in and out of a commercial district. They're something you put a bunch of stuff in, you leave, and you maybe come once a week. So they're not driving traffic. So that was the idea behind these changes back when it was proposed, I think, in early 2022 or late 2021, and that's what kicked off this. So again, the idea would be that we already had brought this once to Planning Commission and Council, and it was kicked back. So if Planning Commission moved forward with these changes, in full disclosure, we expect again that there'd be a large amount of pushback again. So we want to make sure that if Planning Commission doesn't agree with them, we don't want to have to go through the headache of putting out letters again to the business owners stating, hey, we're proposing these changes, and then starting that process again.
So why was there pushback from the business owners?
Sure. So some of them felt that was putting undue regulations on them, which, to be fair, it is. If you're like Cernhouse, they would have their business establishment would fall under a conditional use. So if they ever wanted to come forward and expand, they would have to go through the conditional use. Now, of course, Cernhouse has no issues. We don't have any issues with Cernhouse whatsoever. But the idea would be, because of the other properties that we do have issues with, everybody would have to fall under those regulations.
And technically, they all, right now, we passed this ordinance, they're non-conforming. They can continue as long as they want, and then if they stop use for 12 months, then they lose their
Yeah.
Yes.
non-conforming status, but they could still come for a conditional use to say, hey, we want to open it back up, and then at that point, it's like, you're going to start all your half-fixed vehicles sitting out in front yard. You've got to keep them in the back or fenced in.
And that is a good point. So all the businesses as is, the city doesn't have the right to say, we're going to change this, and now you have to meet that definition. Everybody gets to continue to operate just as they are. They become a legal non-conforming use. So if they do expand or change, then they would have to meet the new. But if they just continue to operate their business as is, they can basically operate indefinitely.
They could sell the business to someone else and they can continue to use it because it hasn't changed use.
So basically what you want to do is just take out the...
You want more control on what goes in there. So, as he said, the one old car wash and repair shop.
Yeah.
They'd like to be able to see you can't have those half torn apart vehicles sitting out along the curb for 3 weeks on end until you get to them. I
Yeah,
think that's
making
the
them,
intent people complain about those.
yeah, making them a conditional
And
use
again-
so that they come before the commission
I
and
mean, it's a
they.
fair thing, but then I think it's a fair argument, but then to put it on all the other businesses that have already, such as Sterna House, I mean, what other businesses would it affect?
Will keep us from letting storage buildings be along highway. Be more of a hotel instead of storage units, which might have been better, right?
I think that would have been really good, I wish I would have been.
Well, I mean, I think that's the point too, is if we were to move these other ones, like warehousing, wholesaling, and storage to conditional uses, you have the same issue with duplexes, is that if they meet the conditions as required by us, they're allowed, we can't just flat out say no to the use. So that's the idea behind actually flat out just removing them completely. I think some of the issues, the businesses, for instance, Victory Fireworks that had an issue, they said their two buildings could be conceived as primarily for warehousing because they're only opened a portion of the year, so they didn't agree with the changes. I don't know if that's for debate because it is retail that they're open for a portion of the year, but just to give their side of the story as well.
Just so for my purpose for clarity, because on line 701, 702, it does list warehousing and wholesaling and storage establishments as a conditional. You're saying this is going to be removed from this section?
I guess I would look for planning commission's feedback.
But that was the proposal?
Originally, that was the
Okay.
proposal.
Yeah, I could see saying 701, 702 should go somewhere other than along the highway.
It's
A lot of
good.
times it's mostly pole buildings or something, it'd be better to put them back in the industrial area or something. You know? Then our gateway to the city, and here you drive through, and there's a bunch of pole buildings, it's mostly warehouses.
Okay, but wouldn't that, I mean, so we're taking out this, but wouldn't that kind of look dumb on our part since we just approved this storage facility right on the highway?
No, it's telling us that if we would have had the tools to do it, we would not have allowed them there.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's kind of what it's
We didn't
saying.
approve, we didn't have a choice not to approve it, because.
Right, we couldn't
it was
not
authorized
use.
So think of it this way, when you have a problem, and you write an ordinance, well, you're gonna have to let that cow through the gate, but you're gonna close the gate so that the rest of them don't get out.
I love that.
Yeah, so yeah.
Really good.
So things that have happened, they already happened, but you've learned and you're moving forward and you're gonna close the gate now.
On those kinds of things. Okay, that really helps me.
And also, the industrial districts, I-2 and I believe I-3 also allow for warehousing and wholesaling, so that would still have permitted uses elsewhere in the city.
So what are so the pushback that we got, just so I can understand what happened before. So who was the pushback from? Like, was it from Victory? Was it from Sterna House? Was it from?
I don't wanna try to speak for them, so I apologize, but that was the feedback we got at the time when we ended up going through this process was these regulations don't seem like what you're trying to do is fair to us. We don't believe it's right, so we have met all the requirements you have asked of us, and now you're trying to put additional ones on top of us.
Okay, and so, but they're already grandfathered in, so it doesn't matter unless they change or want to add on, correct?
Mhm.
And then also if they didn't use it for 12 months as that business. Okay. I just had to get clarity there, sorry.
And really, and if they want to change it, it's only what they want to add or change has to comply. If the building still complies, not like, oh, now your whole building got it.
You can't have that business there.
So just for my notes, then 701 and 702 are being stricken, and because that use is allowed elsewhere, it's not a conditional use?
I don't think it should be a conditional use in a highway commercial. at
Okay.
all.
If we can go back up to 699, I just thought it might be clear. If this is an RV campground, I'm not, transient travel trailer park, is that an RV campground? Is that what that's trying to be? I was just going to rename it so it's clearer, but what is a transient travel trailer park?
It'd be a campground.
Yeah, campground, I guess.
Transit means they come and go as they please, so we want that now.
So just leave it as is?
Should that get moved out of there?
No, I just wondered, I thought I could rename it. It's in red. I was just going to call it an RV campground.
I think it's good the way it is.
Okay.
It's a condition.
All right, everything else we've
Just to be
talked.
clear though, that is something that would be all right okaying
Along
with
highway,
conditions.
along the highway, that's what it's saying.
Campground?
That's basically what we're saying, if we leave it in there as a conditional
I'd
use.
say remove it.
Do we have any of those right now?
Oh, but do we want any
Well,
of those right now?
well, do you want any, is the
Let's say
question.
that, yeah, that, just out past the high school, we allow a campground right along Highway 10.
I would say no.
Strike it?
In the
I would take it out.
In the commercial zone, I would say yes.
I agree.
You know, get it back, if it wants to be an industrial zone.
Where, because I don't know that is, I haven't looked for it, where do you think it belongs then?
Outside the city limits.
Outside the city.
Yeah, I was gonna say, do we need a camper?
No, it's up
Well, I
you
don't,
might
you
get-
don't need a campground, it's up to the city.
You
yeah.
might get one, but that, at that point, we'll address it at that time. The city
I
will
don't,
address it.
yeah, I would say. take it out.
Well, if it's not a permitted use anywhere, they won't come before you because they won't have a,
They can ask for a change.
they won't have a way to say, can I have this?
Because we got enough land to the east of us that if it ever got annexed and you had a campground wanted to go in, because it's just better for campground than housing, you know, you might consider it. I think we let them annex and ask for that at that point, and you can always address it at that point.
So just strike it from the ordinance?
I think strike it.
Okay. Okay, this is the light industrial. So earlier on, I'm on line 728, because there probably are maybe some residential uses that are already in there. And I don't know, putting a date on that or just allowing them to be in there if they're already existing. I'm not sure what, I'm thinking, about, there was, when they changed from a trailer to a mobile home, there was a date that said when it was. And so I don't know if you want to say from a certain date you can have them in there or just say if they're there, they're just non-conforming and just let them go.
That'd be my idea.
Yeah, I don't know. if they're
Non-conforming, at
here.
some point they come down and they revert to industrial.
So just leave them be non-conforming and eventually they will work themselves out of it. Okay.
So did you just,
Excuse me?
so you just touched upon that zoning map, so that's one of the things,
Over there.
as part of your zoning map would change from
The old
the
seed company.
I-1 right now, which they currently are, to a R3, which would be high density
That'd be
residential.
the old seed company, correct, that property.
Yeah,
Is that these three in the middle?
Town.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, what would they change it from?
To, like, apartment buildings.
So just again
The
to,
old seed, Jake seeds.
Old Jake Seed Company buildings, they eventually maybe disappear. I mean, they're gonna stay as long as they use it, but if someone might wanna come and say, buy the whole works, I wanna put a bunch of apartment buildings in.
Right.
That's
so
what it
similar to the other zoning changes, these two would have letters that would go out. So again, just to clarify, if there's major issues that you think, okay, I don't
Well,
agree.
What you don't want is them to tear it down and bring another factory right in the middle of
Yeah.
town.
That's right.
So
That's what you're trying
the
to do.
proposal is going from I-1 to R.
to our high density residential.
Yes.
Well, I mean, do we want a bunch of apartment complexes going there?
Well, someone could come in and ask to have it rezoned, but right now we'd say the best use, because along the highway, it's not like in the middle of a residential district, it's next to apartments anyway.
Yeah, there's some there
So they go to
already.
Apartments.
Yeah.
You know, next to mobile home and then next to some of the apartments that are out there.
That's fair.
And you don't want, like you say, you don't want to build a factory there.
Well, I don't want to build a factory, but I don't want to build more,
Maybe.
I don't want them to build more camel lots.
Seed company.
Maybe they come into a PUD anyway and make it twin homes.
The thing is with apartments nowadays is you can't make money when you build nice ones. So they'd be nice.
Okay.
So we're good?
Yep. That's
When we make changes like this, the current property owners want to sell their garage thing to somebody else to be a garage. It stays a garage until they tear it
Till the
down.
use changes, yeah.
Change use.
Yeah, till the use changes. So this, where's this 20%? I think that's on a, here we go, I think it's on 790, is this in the, which, make sure I'm in the right district here. No, this is the heavy. Oh, so I'm on line 742, just saying that restricting them to to structures or alterations on slopes of 24, it's a conditional use if they're going to be on a steep slope. They just need to come before you, which is language that's in the next industrial district that's on the same language, so just bringing that into this industrial district.
Do we want them to even allow to build on a steep slope?
Well,
Conditional use.
it's up to you.
Could ask those people that have the wall that's falling down. and
I
their
was
house
also
is
gonna say
on.
that.
At that point, is it too steep? You know, DNR gets excited about the 20%, not that we have to listen to them, but at some point, then where's all the retaining walls, and where do they put the water, and do we even allow it?
So one of
Anything
the.
greater than 20% or greater, don't let them, anything less than that, it's,
So, the way that some communities have done that is they have gone and mapped them as environmentally sensitive and then restricting development in environmentally sensitive. And so, but you could just say a certain percentage but there's other things that may be environmentally sensitive other than steep slopes. But at least for this change, you could just say, greater than 19% or, 20% or greater, you can't build on, or pick a number, whatever you think is too steep.
and that should be anywhere in the city, and I mean, we got some steep slopes, but we want houses hanging over the edge and water running off, and we tore it off. That's my only thought. I don't know what anybody else's
But
opinion
if it's
is.
a conditional use, you can have the stipulations of what they need to do.
Or maybe it doesn't belong there, they didn't have big enough lot.
Yeah.
I'm gonna build out my hillside because I don't wanna buy a lot that doesn't make sense. I don't know, I just throw it out there. Gentlemen at the other end? Any thoughts?
I don't have any thoughts on that one.
So leave it that it's conditional use on slopes 20% or greater?
Yeah.
I mean, an example, would that be the retaining wall that fell?
That hillside was greater than 20%, and they
Yeah.
built onto that, well, we gotta make it level, and then just, it's a lot to mess with and water off, that's it.
That I can't. That was also a catastrophic event.
Yes, it was, but there again, if they hadn't built it, it would have been a catastrophic event,
Why'd the city do that? That's
That's right.
the one that fell in, down by the dock.
Oh, that was years ago, that's why.
I'm just
Are
saying.
we good with this?
Yeah.
I think
Did I go the wrong way? Make sure I went the right way. I'm going to I1 to I2. Yeah, okay. We talked about the impervious surface, adding charging stations, and added large-scale solar as a conditional use. Otherwise, that district remains pretty much the same. Mixed industrial, the I3. We added logistics, manufacturing, and wholesaling here, and Matt, do you want to speak to this at all?
Yeah, so the idea was removing it from the commercial and then putting it into the I3, which is more of what manufacturing, wholesaling, and logistics are in terms of uses, specifically the wholesaling and warehousing aspect of it.
At e-charging, remove the same thing, the conditional use, same thing with solar and impervious, we've already talked about that. The A1. Agriculture district, we added charging stations, solar farms, it should be small scale as a permitted use, and then remove the special uses and classify them as a conditional use. And the preservation, you just remove the special uses out of that one, so that district pretty much remained as is.
So when again, conditional use means they need to get special permission?
Come before, do conditional uses come before this group, or they come before the Board of Adjustment?
This group.
This group, okay, so they come before you. And then the planned unit development, I think probably the biggest change is that we're proposing is that this is an overlay district, rather than the way it was. A lot of it was rewritten just to be clearer, but I don't know that a lot of it changed. Now, the benefit of having it as an overlay district rather than, just is making them rezone and then go through the PUD is that over time, if that So let's say that, you know, that the PUD is in or near a residential and they want it to be something other than that, and the underlying zoning would allow certain uses, but the PUD would say, okay, we're going to negotiate as to what it is. But if that PUD goes belly up, then it reverts back to the underlying zoning. You're not stuck with a really big use that may not fit there, other than under a PUD. And so, and then I think there was also some notation that to know where these PUDs are, that there would be a designation in the ordinance that says that this was approved as a PUD. I'm not gonna go through this in great detail. I guess if we've looked at this, I don't know that there's anything new about the PUD other than it's basically an overlay district. But if you have questions about the mechanics of a PUD, we could talk about that.
So a PUD is future development, right? Like
Planned unit development.
Sure, but what is that really, what is that?
Usually, you know, they're looking for additional density sometimes, relaxation of setbacks, maybe mixed uses, and so what happens, you know, is that they will come to the Plan Commission with a proposal for, you know, I'd like to have a PUD here for X, Y, and Z, and now it's an arm wrestling match of sorts, you know. We'll give you that, but you got to give us something. It's a negotiating tool that the city can use. In order for you to get additional density, you got to, you know, we're going to want something in return.
So PUD is like, is that, where is that in our town? I guess I'm confused as.
Well, you have them already
I
in town.
believe, so Palmetto was an example of a PUD. A good example is that if we ever wanted to do a transient trailer campground, that would be something that we would require to go through a PUD, because we'd probably want screening and significant say in terms of how it's laid out.
Was the middle school, wasn't that gonna be a PUD? Isn't that what
It might have been.
zone that as too?
It might have been. Because it doesn't meet all the setbacks.
It didn't meet all the setbacks.
Dexter up here, I think that's a PUD, right? Seaward construction over here. At least that's what it looks like on the map.
They might, yeah, I know for sure Palmetto, I'm not sure as the other ones,
It's like, yeah, across from Johnson Construction there.
if the old hospital site developed, that would be a
No, that's
PUD.
Barry T's.
So what is that then?
That's probably some type of PUD. But they need to meet certain setbacks and they kind of put them in addition. That's why, yeah.
And what you have in front of you just said that it would be allowed just in the residential, but in talking to staff, and we didn't get that corrected, but it would be allowed, permitted in the residential and commercial districts. So it's not everywhere. It's restricted to those districts that you have a PUD. Minimum lot area 1 acre, unless otherwise authorized by the zoning administrator. And then we're talking about 1 acre, so we addressed that above. So there would be a minimum area that you to even come and say, you know, to take your time, it has to be at least a certain size. Otherwise, it's not going. Unless there's extenuating circumstances that says that they can convince the zoning administrator that, yeah, we'll bring it before the commission here.
So anyone can, under these terms, request a PUD and then come before us and we could, and it looks as though you've struck out all the dimensional requirements, and now it would just be evaluated on a case-by-case basis.
Yes, and you can ask, and you'll be able to ask for those things, you know, as part of what you need. So rather than say, well, it's only this, you know, you can ask for what it is. So.
Can the city
Nix it?
nix it?
Yep.
Absolutely.
For no reason? Like,
Well, I mean, not for no reason, but
Well, I mean,
because you don't
like-
like it, yeah, that's not a, you know. But yeah, if you find that it's not in the city's best interest, you can't come to agreement.
Yeah,
Then it doesn't go
It's
through.
an argument had, and then there's too much bad in it, but we can't say no. But-
No, you can say no.
You can say, no, you can't have a planned unit development, but you can surely build that development according to our residential standards.
Got it.
Yeah. So normally, you know, they're asking for something, and the city's going to want something in return. So if you can't reach that middle ground, well, then you don't approve it. So.
Pretty sure.
So that pretty much gets us through the agenda for this evening, and so kind of what's next. we're looking at 3 chapters, 2 that you haven't seen. One we've had some discussion on, and those have come before you, and that's landscaping, telecommunications, and then parking. Those kind of have, 2 of those have not been presented, one's been discussed. And then once we finish with that, aside from the accessory uses, I think that it's something, then there's at least one more meeting with stuff you haven't seen, and then it's time to say, okay, let's bundle it all together, and if there's any last comments that you have on everything, we would talk about that. Otherwise, we'd be looking for a recommendation to set a public hearing and to move down the road of adopting this ordinance, so.
And just to note, that's when we'd send out the letters to all the property owners and state. So, one of the questions we did have just in general, and I don't know if it's been a large percentage, but there have been people who have stated, and I think it's been brought up here tonight, that we would like something a little bit nicer than some of the buildings that we've seen. So we didn't want to go through the work of putting something together until we got Plan Commission's thoughts either way, but is there any want or desire to try to incorporate into our code some sort of architectural standards?
In the commercial district, maybe.
Yeah, it's not a bad idea.
Sounds like a whole building, they can use a whole building frame, but then.
Well,
brick.
and not industrial.
Or even industrial, depends, you know, on the highway, might. So I'd say yes. My opinion is yes, everybody?
I don't like the idea of residential.
Nope.
What about high-density residential in terms of apartment buildings?
Yeah, they should be part of it.
Yep, we can go with that.
So commercials for sure, and high
Commercial,
density?
industrial, and high-density residential.
Agreed.
So, just so I can pick your brain just a little bit, so I can maybe short circuit some of this, are they the same standards across the board, or would you like them kind of tailored for the commercial, different than industrial and different than the high density residential?
I'd have to imagine that the standards we outline are gonna be low bar stuff, and so they.
The minimums, they're
Yeah,
minimums.
so,
Some facade of break up in the
yeah,
whole building.
they could probably be standard.
All right, I'll put
Standard
together
noise.
something, and if you need to add something or separate them out, we can do that. I'll just put together
They're all
just kind of
standard.
generic, and then we can, it's easier to break them out that way than to try and write 3 different ones, so. Anything else from you guys? That's all I have.
I've got,
Any last questions for me? Yes, sir.
I've got one clarifying question. We circled around this a bit, and then we decided we were gonna come back to it when we talk about auxiliary structures.
What line you on?
For example, it's posted in many locations, but if you look at 32829,
Is this the one we talked about before?
it is. I just
Okay.
want to be clear that,
Yep.
you know, this isn't gonna get published, because as it's written, I don't like the way it's written, but, and that's just my opinion. But we talked about it, we're gonna circle back, and we talked about auxiliary structures, but this verbiage here, you know, would this get edited when we circle back on it? Because I think we're all kind of in agreement that if you count your attached garage as one of the 2.
We haven't talked about accessory structures.
Right, we haven't, but this is what we did talk about.
Yes.
What we'd be approving on, and this is written as, you know.
Yes.
So that's my question is.
My
like, are we gonna-
my notes say that the attached garage doesn't count as an accessory structure, and so that would be across the board. So you would still
That's
get,
what I wanted to
you would still get 2
clarify.
accessory structures,
Yeah,
yes.
and then when we talk about that, then.
Yes, so my notes said across the board.
Okay.
Okay. Last chance, folks.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you very much for the discussion.
Other business, next meeting is Monday, April 3rd at 6. Anybody have any other business?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
I've got an airplane coming in.
This here?
Not this.